everybody for coming. Corbin has brought donuts for everybody here. Just kidding. And coffee, right, Corbin? Yeah. No, thank you for coming. We're getting started, and I do think we can get things rolling this early in the morning. Hey, the private sector works at 8 o'clock, so we might as well be doing that, right, Commissioner? So we're going to call it DPS. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Commissioner, and then I know we may have some questions. So the floor is yours.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Sean Tindall with Mississippi Department of Public Safety. We appreciate the opportunity to come before the subcommittee, Appropriations Committee that handles the Department of Public Safety's budget and talk about some of the things that we've done, some of the things that we've got going on, and some of the places we would like to go from a budget perspective. Just to start out with some of the highlights that we have and successes, I would say, with the agency. With Capitol Police, from July 1st to December 31st, 2022, the 6-month period, we had 200 felony arrests from Capitol Police, 137 misdemeanor arrests. We issued over 2,000 citations. We had a DUI arrest. We seized narcotics. We increased the size of that department to 117 certified officers as of February 1st of this year. We have 17 civilian employees, and I think if you've looked around the city since you have arrived at the Capitol for this session and you hadn't been here in a while, you'd realize that there's been a major influx of Capitol Police officers, and they're doing a good job. So,
which is a good thing.
I think it's been a great success, and they're out there working hard, and we appreciate y'all providing the funding for those officers and giving us competitive salaries so that we could get good officers to join the Capitol Police. Also, I wanted to highlight some of the work that we've had going on at the medical examiner's office. When we got here in 2020, we had over 2,543 incomplete autopsy reports dating back to 2011. We're down to 676 old autopsy reports. We've gone up to 2018, so we've eliminated 7 years of backlog there, and almost 20 or 75% of the backlog. So we're continuing to get that done. We're hopeful that by the end of this year, we will have eliminated the backlog altogether.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting, but what do you attribute? Because I know we appropriated different funds, so I would assume that's part of it. What do you attribute that to?
That is absolutely part of it. We have contracted out with pathologists from across the Southeast to work on the backlog with us. So we have doctors from West Virginia to Arkansas to Tennessee that are working on the backlog. That allows us to have our in-house medical examiners to work on the cases that are coming in. And so I liken it to, if you're in a hole and all you have is a shovel and you keep digging, you're just going to dig yourself deeper. And so we had to figure out ways to get ourselves out of that hole instead of just using the shovel. So by contracting out the backlog to doctors in other regions, it allowed our current medical examiners to focus on the cases that are coming in. And we have had record number of homicides. We're up to, this year we have a little bit less. Our 2022, we had a little bit less, but we went from having about 300 homicides a year, 350 to 600. And that puts a lot bigger load on the medical examiners that we have in-house. We do have currently 4 medical examiners on staff, and that's been a huge benefit. There was a stretch where we only had 1 medical examiner for the entire state.
I was going to say, and for like Senator Tate and Senator Williams, I mean, I think we, as short as 5 years ago, we had 1 medical examiner, and that was an issue. And through the work of Commissioner Tindall, through the work of everybody, we're now to that point. So that's good.
Yeah, it's going really well. Dr. Stacy Turner, who's now the chief medical examiner for the state, has done a great job. We're looking to hire our first pathology assistant, which are highly trained individuals with medical nursing backgrounds that can actually do autopsy themselves under the supervision of a pathologist. So we'll be hiring our first one February 1st. And we think that will also help with the doctors, because the reality is, and we've tried to figure out ways that they don't have to go in court and testify all over the state by doing remote testimony and things of that nature. But they're still going to have to go testify, and you're still going to have to be working on those autopsies and doing those as they're gone. And so having these technicians in the office that can continue the process while they're out testifying is going to be a major benefit. And so that's going to be, I think, a great success story, and one really across the nation. They might be looking towards Mississippi as, how did you fix the problem? And we're going to get there, and I'm hopeful by the end of the year we'll be there. Cybersecurity, we hired a new cybersecurity director for Homeland Security. And I know that's been kind of big on everybody's mind, but we were able to bring in a new director for that has a background with the Guard and in cybersecurity. We just hired a new director at Melota, at the Mississippi Law Enforcement Officers Training Academy. Tony Carlton came down from North Mississippi and is running that. We have a trooper school that will be starting in February of this year. We're expecting 50 graduates. We've tried to set this up so that we can have a trooper school on an annual basis, so we can do year-round recruiting. We have seen with that approach an uptick in the number of recruits that we've had apply, as well as the quality of those applying. So we're pleased with that. The Driver Services Bureau, obviously we've made a lot of successes there. We are about to get into a phase where the system is going to need to be upgraded with Idemnia. So we'll be asking for some money to help pay for that. Over the last year, we've paid out to date over $6 million in premium pay for law enforcement officers across the state. Y'all passed that bill last year, offering premium pay for officers that worked during the course of COVID. And we've paid out over $2 million in death benefits to officers and first responders that died during COVID. So we've distributed out over $8 million across the state to first responders that were either working during COVID or died as a result of COVID. So it's been a busy year at the Department of Public Safety, and I'd like to give a lot of credit to our support staff that's been able to get that money out and deployed across the state. They've done a tremendous job. Looking at our consolidated budget, the recommendation from the Legislative Budget Committee, 137 million. We're asking for an increase in FY 2024 of 35 million in general funds, another 15 in state support, another 1.5 million in special funds. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through each of the divisions and talk a little bit about some of the things that we're requesting in each specific arena. Starting off with the Mississippi Highway Patrol. As I mentioned, we'd like to get to where we're running an annual trooper school. So we've requested that in, yes, sir. I don't know if the cord's going to reach. There we go. I didn't want to pull it out. Sorry about that. So yeah, that's a lot louder. So we'd like to have another trooper school starting in February of 2024, like we're doing this year. That would be about 60 new troopers. I will say what we're seeing is we're seeing a very high number of troopers retire. Part of that is for about an 8-year period, 8 to 10 year period. We only had 2 trooper schools. So you have a large gap where we're starting to get to a point where troopers that came in before that are retiring. And we've got a lot of younger troopers in that intermediate level because of the lack of trooper schools for about an 8-year period. You either have young troopers or old troopers. And so we're seeing a lot of retirements, and we're trying to get up to that 600 trooper level. We're asking for another 1.5 million at MHP just due to inflationary costs, gas, things of that nature. Cars are more expensive. We're also needing some maintenance at some of our troop stations. They're aging, and that's going to be about $1 million in special funds. And then equipment at MHP, bulletproof vests, 1 to 10 meters, and vehicles for graduating troopers will be another $1 million. I will tell you that we are meeting with Motorola and a lot of other providers of body cameras. It is our goal by the end of next year that Highway Patrol, CTED, Capitol Police, and all our law enforcement on patrol will have body cams. And so we're moving towards that. On our offices of sports services, we're looking to get an increase of about 1.5 million. We're trying to create an internal audit division and various support positions for information services, procurement, maintenance. I think over the years, what's happened at DPS is we have failed to fill some of those positions. And as people left, we just kind of went without. And, you know, when you improve the backroom operations with HR or audit, you're able to track the money and do a better job. And Deputy Commissioner McDevitt's been doing really good, but we feel like we need additional support with the growth of the agency. We need additional backroom personnel to help deal with Capitol Police coming on board, CTEC coming on board, the growth of a cybersecurity division at Homeland Security. So we're asking for some of that. We're looking to bring in a timekeeping software. We're still keeping up with our time handwritten notes and filling out our forms. We want to do a timekeeping thing for all employees. So, you know, those are softwares that you got to buy and again, increase costs with that. And this is really, and this is moving to the next one is the crime lab. And we've talked a lot about the successes that we've had at the Department of Public Safety in the last couple of years. And we've made a lot of improvements at the crime lab. Director Mary Dukes, who came on board about a year ago, has really hit the ground running. But we're getting to a critical level at the crime lab. The backlog that we have in drug analysis and ballistics and DNA, although DNA is doing pretty good right now, it's getting bigger and it's getting worse. The reality is, much like a lot of state agencies, we have employees that have been there 15 years and longer, and we have employees that have been there 3 years or less, but there's a huge gap in between. And it helped with SEC squared as far as bringing some of those salaries up, but we're still facing a situation where it's hard to recruit and it's hard to keep employees. I use the example of, we had a kid come on board, I can say a kid, a young man. He graduated from Mississippi State, came in as a trainee, making $33,000. Once he was completing his trainee status, he could have bumped him up to about 38 or 40. He had an offer to go work at a private lab in Erdick over in Vicksburg, making 55. And there's just no way we can compete with that and keep that person at our lab. And so to that end, I did bring a couple of people from the crime lab that have been, this has been their career. And I met Brandy when we were doing employee appreciation luncheons back in November, and we sat down and had a really good talk about her time at the crime lab. She'd been there about 25 years, and opportunities that were being presented to her, and the fact that she was probably going to be leaving in the near future. So I'd like to introduce y'all to Brandy and Keith and let them tell a little bit about their story.
Yeah, and just, I'm cognizant of the time, so we've allotted, just for the record, allotted basically 40 minutes for DPS and 40 minutes for corrections. So just be aware of that. But yes, I'd like to hear from you.
Okay. Brandy.
Thank you very much.
But
Good morning,
you're leaving.
I'm leaving.
So
Yes,
this
sir.
is your exit interview.
Yes, sir. I don't
All right,
think anybody's
so
had this.
First is, how is Commissioner Tyndall as a boss?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yes. Fantastic.
Okay.
In all seriousness, Director Dukes and Commissioner Tyndall have done more for the crime laboratory. Obviously with your help, thank you, $1. With your help in the last year, more so than I have seen probably since 2007-8. If I can indulge you for just a second with some visual aids. This is a picture of my children. They are currently, my daughter is 22, my son is 18. This is a picture of my children the last time I got a significant raise with the Mississippi Forensics Laboratory. Not kidding. It's funny, but it's not when it's your salary. London was 7 and Lawson was 3. It's not funny. but I'm laughing too. Thank you for that indulgence. In 2007-8, the crime laboratory received a realignment, which increased salaries. Between 2008 and 2021, my personal salary increased 4.3%.
Okay, and I'm gonna say, please tell us what your job is, because there may be people here
I'm
who
sorry.
don't know what your job is,
Got
and
you.
then we'll go to that.
I was trying to hurry, but I had that. I am a forensic scientist specializing in the field of conventional serology. I analyze items of evidence for blood and body fluids. I analyze sexual assault kits. I'm the next step after the hospital. Clothing items for blood, seminal fluid, preserved for DNA. Basically, my job is to tell what the body fluid is. It then goes to DNA analysis, and they potentially can tell you whose body fluid
And
it
what kind
is.
of training is required for that?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Millsaps College with a major in biology, with an emphasis in molecular biology and a minor in chemistry. I also attended Mississippi Baptist Medical Center's School of Medical Technology. So I'm a medical technologist by trade. In 1999, I started at the Mississippi Forensics Laboratory, crime lab at the time, and entered the drug section, controlled substance section. I worked there for approximately 8 years, and then I cross-trained in the field of serology. At the time that I was in the drug section, I was consistently the highest case working analyst in the state. As a serologist, I am the top 2 in case working analysts. And unfortunately, I'm taking all of that education, training, and experience, and I'm going to a private laboratory starting March 1st.
Now back to why your raises or non-raises.
Right. Our scientists start out at $33,600. They are required to have a bachelor's degree for the most part in a hard science. So chemistry, biology, biochemistry, not psychology or sociology. And once again, $33,600. Just to throw this out there, Marshall County is hiring a correctional officer right now. It's on the state personnel website. It requires a high school equivalent curriculum to an 8th grade education, and they are starting out at $36,700. 8th grade education, yet our scientists who have to come in with a bachelor's degree or they're not qualified, start out at $33,600. Unfortunately, because that salary is so low, we are also not getting the top pick of graduates. Top picks of graduates are going where the money is, and it's not at the Mississippi Forensics Laboratory. What happens is we will get employees, we will train them, and within a year or 2 years, they will leave our laboratory for $55,000, $60,000 jobs. We are not able to retain them for the salaries that we are paying. And that's entry level. For those of us who have been there for 15 years plus, once again, had not seen a salary increase between 2008 and 21. However, thank Director Dukes, Commissioner Tyndall. Some of us received a 10% increase in salary for 2022. 7% of that came in December. So we appreciate that. Unfortunately, for some of us, it's just too little too late.
Point out, and we have a young lady that works in the Meridian Lab with Brandy. Her name is Maggie Rowland, and Maggie finished her time as a trainee for a year, and now she's finishing her 2nd year as an employee of the Mississippi Crime Lab, a scientist.
Correct.
Bachelor's degree, and her salary right now is $34,100. So she's about to go out on maternity leave. I'm confident that if we don't have this situation fixed for her by the time she comes back, she's probably going to be working at the lab with them that they're joining. So these are really real. When you look at what we're requiring them to have as far as education and then what we're willing to pay. And I go back to this, and I understand that government jobs sometimes don't need to be competing with the private sector on salaries. but the importance of what goes on at the crime lab. When we're talking about the analysis that has to be done, that can affect somebody's freedom, can affect victims and whether or not the perpetrators of the crimes against them go to jail. It's so important that I think there's a strong argument that those that work at the Mississippi Crime Lab ought to make more than market because their job is that important. And so I think we got to take a hard look at what the salaries are, not just meeting market, but maybe even exceeding market when you're talking about the scientists and the importance of the job that they do at the Mississippi Crime Lab. We talked a little bit about the young person that left and went to work in Vicksburg on the coast. We had a crime lab technician down there named Raven. We were, I think, paying her $40,000 a year, maybe 38, 39. Jackson County started its own crime lab and offered her over $50,000 a year to come be their private drug analysis technician. And so we lost somebody, and other counties have talked about that. And we're trying to do our job and do our best. We have a press conference coming up Monday with Rankin County where they've agreed to hire an employee, and actually we're going to put them to work at the Mississippi Crime Lab in Pearl so that counties don't have to start their own crime lab, but maybe they can help fund some of the positions that we have and fill them. So we're working, trying to find solutions. But I think from the legislative perspective, at some point we got to ask ourselves, how important is this job? And are we willing to pay more than market to get the best and the brightest doing it? It'd be the equivalent of UMMC saying, well, because it's a government hospital, we're going to pay the doctors here less. That's not going to work. Doctors are important no matter where they're working, and you want to get the best of the best. And I think that's where we got to get to at the crime lab.
Can you mention something about the recent competition? Can you tell the committee about that with the cannabis?
Oh, yeah. And so both Brandy and Keith that are back here are going to work at a private crime lab for the medical marijuana. Not a private crime lab, but a private lab that is a medical marijuana lab, and they're doing the analysis there. And I'm going to let Keith talk a little bit. Brandy's retiring, so she's in a different situation, right? She can start collecting her purse check. I'm going to let Keith talk a little bit about the situation he's in and why he's leaving to go to the same work.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time and allowing me to speak today. My name is Keith McMahon. I work at the Forensics Laboratory in Meridian and work in the seized drug section. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree with a major in chemistry and minor in biology from the University of Mississippi, and have gone through a 9 to 10 month training program at the Crime Laboratory and have certification from the American Board of Criminalistics in drug analysis. My salary increase from 2011 to 2021 was approximately $2,000 or 3% over that 10-year period. What did SEC Squared do to change that? Well, initially, my new MS-11 market value paid with SEC Squared implementation was $11,945 less than my current salary at the time, which was $66,300. This is kind of what initiated my interest in just going out and looking at other opportunities to see what was there. My salary increase over the past year has been $7,000, and that's very much appreciated. And that's due to Commissioner Tindall and Mary Dukes and the work that y'all have done, and that's very much appreciated. So more has been done in the past year. I'll echo what Brandy said, and I didn't get paid for it. More has been done in the past year than over the previous 10 to 15 years to bring salaries up at the laboratory. And I am 14 months, this has been a hard decision for me because I'm 14 months away from being eligible for retirement. And it took a really good opportunity to make me want to leave being that close to retirement. I was involved in some interviews at the lab for drug analysts in Pearl about 2 years ago. I can remember one really good candidate, intelligent young guy, well-spoken, great personality, the kind of people you really want to hire. After the interview, he was offered the job in Meridian. Some time went on, so I asked my supervisor, I said, well, what happened with this guy? Are we still going to hire him? He said, well, he found out what the starting salary was. Apparently, he had looked at the range and thought that he might be on the upper end of that range. And when he found out he was going to be on the lower end of that range, he said, well, I'm making more than that now. So he declined to come work for us. And his desire was to work in forensics, but because of the salary, he decided not to. And I just want y'all to know that I'm not leaving the laboratory mad. The laboratory's been good to me. I've enjoyed working there, but it just comes down to an opportunity financially that I can't turn away from.
He's making 73 now. He's gonna be making 95 here come February, March 1st. So while he's at, I think, close to market at 73, market now is 95.
Are y'all both in the positions that y'all get either subpoenaed or to testify? So I don't know that everybody knows that. So in addition to that, you get subpoenaed by prosecutors and even I would assume defense attorneys to come all over the state. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you end up having to travel the state, testify and do that.
We do. Now, I'll say over the last year, I probably testified about 4 times. That has gone down a little bit over the years.
Yeah, but you get subpoenaed a lot more than
But I
that,
get
right?
subpoenaed quite often. Yes, sir.
Well, and I want to say, I certainly understand where y'all are. Thank you for your service to the state of Mississippi for what you do. And to Commissioner Tyndall's point, I would say that about the job being done, you're neither prosecution nor defense. You are doing it. And for those who want to claim this is like a prosecution, it's not, because if you analyze it and it turns out to not be drugs, then guess what? The case is dismissed. It's about justice in that. So from us, thank you for coming to testify here and for what we hear. I think the message has been delivered. You can bet on that. So, but we, you know, if it's a core function of government, which I would argue it is, then we have a right to look at that. And so we want to support you. Well, let me put it this way. Don't blame anybody for making better salary and all that. So we have to, so good luck to you, and we have to recognize that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tyndall, in the interest of time, I would like to get over to your deficit request. If you can, that sticker's impressive. So if you could give us an overview of that.
I'm gonna go off memory. We don't have our deficit request since I wasn't anticipating talking about the deficit. I don't have the sheet with me, but I'll try to go off memory with that.
Well, I'll run down. Capitol Police, 4.4 million, support services, 932,000. Highway Patrol, driver's license, 3.2 million, forensic lab, 3 million. That's it in general.
So the forensics lab, trying to get those salaries up to market and higher in some cases is a lot of that. I can tell you that Highway Patrol has been running at somewhat of a deficit for several years now. We've been taking money out of special funds to help pay the short gap in the Highway Patrol budget. Some of that came about because about 4 years ago, the contribution to their retirement increased from about 40% to 49%. So that increase was never really dealt with as far as our budget. So we're asking to fill that gap. You also have increased costs with fuel and cars that are being dealt with there. Capitol Police, we added a number of officers as y'all requested. If you recall, you increased the pins to 150. But you only gave us a funding for about half of the increase in the number of officers. we had our foot on the gas and we've kept going. So part of that budget request is to cover the cost of the additional officers that we've hired beyond what y'all gave us money for. And so driver services, again, trying to get those salaries up from where they were. We have been losing people continuously at driver services, leaving for other jobs or low paying jobs. And I think the reality is once you take their benefit package out, and if you're talking about a 28-year-old, they don't really care too much about their retirement. They're more concerned about paying their cell phone bill and their rent. And so they're leaving for other jobs, and we're trying to figure out ways to keep them. So we've had to increase or trying to increase some of those salaries for the smaller level so that we don't lose the clerks that we've had at driver services and the momentum that we've had going there.
And then I want to open it up to questions. Can you talk about your requested increase for Homeland Security?
Yes. So the big thing in Homeland Security and with the Lieutenant Governor's directive is he wants Homeland Security to be the leader in cybersecurity for the state. We've just added a new cybersecurity director. As I mentioned, that's a high paying job. I mean, cybersecurity is those individuals have a lot of offers to go work in other sectors, but the public sector's very important because our assets are vulnerable. And I know the Warren County School District had a situation where they were under a cyber attack. And so, and I think got hacked and then had to basically get extorted to pay to get that information back. So we now have a cybersecurity director. We're trying to build that out around him. And so, part of the budget request is to grow the cybersecurity division, which increasingly is becoming more and more and more important. And to be quite frank, Mississippi's behind the curve. You look at other states and where they've gone from a cybersecurity directive, they've been on a clear mission, and Mississippi's kind of been floundering in the wind. And so it's a matter of time before we get attacked. And when we do, if we're not prepared by putting these folks in place, we're going to be in grave trouble. So the biggest part of that is growing the cybersecurity division, also improving the Fusion Center. For years, the Fusion Center was funded with federal money. That's no longer the case. And so standing up the Fusion Center with state assets and state money is important because that's how we get intel on a variety of different criminal elements, whether having occurred or whether they're going to occur. So we're looking at some opportunities to do some regional fusion centers. And for those that don't understand, fusion centers are made up of analysts that try to collect intel on potential crimes, riots, things of that nature. And they use and go through the internet and Facebook and social media. And then they try to compile all that information and they fuse it together so that you can get intel reports on those types of things. So Homeland Security is a growing division, and it's really, important with cybersecurity and these fusion functions that we get that funding to make it fully operational.
Thank you. All right. Any questions from the committee? Senator Tate.
Okay. Thank you for your service. You're doing a good job. I'm sorry we're losing y'all. Good luck to y'all. Thank y'all. I want to go back to page handout here, page 3. I may have this wrong, so just stop me if I got this wrong. But I have both of my, or at least one of the 2 counties that I represent are under the impression that if they're a deputy sheriff and they served during a particular time during COVID, that they would be able to receive what they believe is up to $1,000. That's right. And this bill has to do with that, the House Bill 1542. Okay. So I talked to the chief deputy in Clark County Monday morning, and I just got a text from the sheriff in Lauderdale County now. They haven't received any of that money yet. What's the timeline of when you think it'll go out, and where does it go to y'all and then y'all dispense it to the departments, or does it go to the county and then the supervisors? How does that work?
So the way that works, and y'all authorize the funding for it and you put the appropriations to it, and then you pass the bill. The federal guidelines had not come out yet. And then there was some concern about the language that was in the bill and how it was passed. So it took up until about December to get some clarification and to make sure that we did not run afoul of those federal guidelines. So DFA was requiring that. We had the money ready, but there was a holdup to make sure that we did it the right way, because the last thing we wanted was to claw that money back after it had already been dispersed. And so we've done up to $6 million to date. What typically happens is that goes to the governing board of those jurisdictions. So it goes to the city or it goes to the county, and then they have to distribute that out through their payroll system to those officers. And so it's been a pretty heavy lift for our agency, to be quite honest, to try to get that money out. But in cooperation with DFA, we've gotten a good bit of it out, and we'll look into it and see what's happening with those two counties and what the delay may be. I will tell you that, and then the crime lab in Meridian, in which Keith and Brandy work, we might have to shut it down if we don't find some people to go to work in that crime lab. And so that's really going to affect that area.
Okay, Chairman Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in the interest of time, I know the BOC is waiting outside the door to come in, much to your liking, I'm sure, Commissioner. But one comment and then one question. The comment is, as it relates to sounds like the forensics laboratory and personnel are a priority for the agency.
Yes, sir.
And getting that situation corrected, salaries, et cetera. And I think the comment I've got is, you know, under the new SEC squared system, I think that hopefully salaries are going to get to a place. They're not going to move as quickly as the private sector. And that's what I want employees to know. But if these employees are going out and making a lot more money in the private sector, it's a matter of time, and maybe even this year, when salaries in that agency start to follow. So I think, I hope you can lean on your employees to be patient, because if in fact it's true, that's what the market bears, I think there's going to be some increases there. And obviously, you know, there's some caps, some ceilings and floors on the SEC square, but it's going to help, I think. So that's just a comment.
I agree. And I will say I agree. And I think if you ask Keith and Brandy, she said it was a little bit too late, a little bit not enough and a little bit too late. I think if we'd have gotten some of that money to them earlier than December, it might have helped quill some of it, but they had already gone out and done interviews, and I feel like it will get there. I will say, you know, the SEC square sets at a minimum, market and maximum, particularly in this field at this point with what we have going on with medical marijuana. It moves really fast. So it's up to our agency to get with the personnel board and explain to them where market is and get their support. And I think we will get that. But then I also think it's important to emphasize to y'all, and I know it's hard, but trying to get, at least in some of those arenas, the salaries from a budget perspective above or at market for all those employees, because of the importance of what they're doing in the specialized skill set that they have to do that job.
No offense to those employees and others that work in those areas. I mean, there are others. Every agency comes to see me about their priority issues. And again, not to make light of that, because I truly agree that there's not everybody coming out to work has got the scientific background that these two and others in the forensic laboratory have. And there's some things I can talk with you about later about some hopeful progression in getting more forensic scientists out there that'll help. My question is are you able to contract out, when I think about these employees leaving, are you able to contract out with outside facilities to do some of that work? If you get into a shortage, that you can do that and keep the evidentiary, you criminal lawyers, your chain
Chain of
evidence in place, so there's no corruption.
Yes, sir. And we can do that. In fact, I've met with Mary Dukes, and part of the ARPA money that y'all gave for the crime lab, for example, to push out some of the autopsy reports to be contracted out to eliminate the backlog. We're looking at ways that we can do that with private labs. Maybe it might even include them coming in and using our facilities overnight. And so we're exploring different opportunities, particularly to address the backlog. And that's got to be dealt with, and then trying to get our staffing to keep up with the current amount of cases coming in is the other part of that. But the short answer is yes. We feel like we can find some way to contract with outside firms to come in and at least help us with the backlog and get us caught up from the situation.
Let's talk about that on your contract labor portion of your budget too. So thank you, Commissioner, and Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I know time has passed, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? So thank you very much and thank you for coming to testify to us. Appreciate it. We'll be talking certainly as we're going through the process. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll get Department of Corrections here. Thanks. If we could get the corrections. Oh. If y'all can come ahead and take a seat, please. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the Department of Corrections. Just to let y'all know, we've allotted 40 minutes at the most. You don't have to take all that.
Yeah, plenty.
So we've allotted that. So, and a couple members had to step out on something else. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Commissioner. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having us today, and we have with us Kerry McDonald, who is our money guru. Anyway, we're honored to be here. I'd like to say first that we congratulate Parchment because they passed their ACA certification Friday. So now we have Parchment certified. It'll be approved at the ACA convention in 2 more weeks, and then CMCF and SMCI. So that's really important for the Justice Department to have those done. And we do have somewhat of a Department of Corrections that we feel like is moving forward, and violence is down. We're particularly proud of Walnut Grove. We have almost 300 inmates there, and that A&D program is successful to the point that we just doubled it so that we'll have 80 in A&D there. We work with our health medical people because we wanted to really work on A&D, because if we do that, then we take out the economy for the gangs, and then we work on addiction, because most of the calls home were because inmates were trying to buy drugs and scamming their parents for money to pay for the drugs. So if we can kill the addiction, then that market goes away. So that helps us with the gang problem that we've pretty well worked down. I'm glad to say that at Walnut Grove, we feel like we can certify there's no cell phone, there's no contraband. That prison is totally free of contraband. We don't find any there, and they use the wall phones because they don't have cell phones. So we succeeded in getting control of it there. And one mechanism for that was polygraph for the officer that we've hired there. The other good thing is the personnel board worked well with us. And so our new pay plan starts January the 1st at $19.35 an hour. So we're going to be doing hiring blitz like crazy, starting Saturday with Probation Pro and all our people out with buses and so forth to try to recruit and hire as many people we can, because we feel out medical is correct now. We feel like the A&D programs are in place, and we've moved the women to Delta, 280 of them. Finally, 600 will be there, and that creates more bed space for women, increase male beds by 300. And we're opening up SMCI, which is creating 400 more beds additionally there. So Marshall is open, wide open like it was at 900. So we have adequate bed. We speeded up the intake by privatizing that. So we kind of caught up everywhere we go. So Kerry, if you want, you can talk about the budget. So that to him, I don't do money.
Okay, I think everybody has received a letter yesterday, the day before yesterday, regarding MDOC's running, is asking for 2023 deficit appropriation of $28,336. As explained in the letter, this is a direct result of trying to come into compliance with the issues that we're having. That includes $7 million of FY 22 funds paid out of FY 23 budget for offsite medical. And to stay in compliance also, we've added, we asked the provider to provide 182 additional positions in the medical program to bring us into compliance with what we think is necessary with the Department of Justice. Of course, there's regional facilities and private prisons.
Wait, before we move on from that, I want to ask a couple questions.
Sure.
on that. Okay, so so my two questions are, it being a deficit request, what changed and why wasn't that seen when we did the budget last year? And second, in looking at your amended budget request, there's the total increase over LBR is 54.9 million. Of that, 45.1 is in contractual services. So that's the budget request. So those are my two questions. Why didn't we, if it's a deficit request, why weren't we able to plan for that accordingly? And what happened to that we're there?
Okay, so I think that in the budget request that we had previously, we didn't realize that these numbers needed to increase to get us to, and the medical number is a moving target. We hired experts that came in that are experts on this medical staffing, and we paid them to tell us exactly what we needed. You know, we got a new contract that's going to be negotiated with the medical provider coming up. So quite candidly, we just went with what we had before and thought that was okay. Then the expert comes in and tells us you need to add 182 new positions in the medical.
For medical?
For medical, that's right.
What's the name of the provider? Have we already, first of all, have we already issued that contract? Or has that already been let?
No, so the contract, so we're building the RFP for the contract
Okay.
right now.
Gotcha.
We're operating under the same contract, under continuing the previous contract. They're providing the service right now, and they're providing the new positions right now, which it drove us into the deficit
They
situation.
meaning,
Vital Core.
I'm sorry?
Vital Core
Okay.
is the name of the company, yeah.
And are they just doing medical or are they doing other stuff?
So
Medical A&D. They're doing medical A&D. They also do an intake. And the Vitacore contract is the old Centurion contract that was here in 2000, in 2020. So therefore, it was insufficient and combat the Department of Justice and be in compliance with what they required. It was imperative that we go ahead and move forward and have the consultant come in to tell us exactly what we needed to have, like we did with our staffing in the prisons. And so then we would be in compliance with DOJ. That's what we're doing, getting compliant there.
So if I understand, yeah. So you made the budget request and then addressing the medical, these experts said, in order to comply, you need 180 or whatever, which translates to this 23 million, I guess. And that's why you're asking for the deficit to do that. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's the 182 positions and then the additional funds to pay the off-site care, the bills. We get bills and that number is just impossible to predict because you don't know who's going off-site, but it's off-site medical bills that carry over into the next year that you pay FY23. Use your FY23 funds to pay those old bills, which could be February, March, April, May of the previous year. And there's really no way to know until we get the bills what those are. To remedy that situation, in addition to it, our company, our medical company, Vital Core Technologies, is now dealing with all the off-site medical care. So we should know we're paying them a fee based on what was budgeted last year to cover these fees moving forward. So they're handling on-site and they're coordinating and paying for the off-site medical
You say
care.
off-site, what do you mean?
So inmates get sick and have to go to a hospital somewhere and or they have to go get, you know, whatever they can't do in the facilities, they have to go off-site to get that.
Chairman Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we're on this point, let me make sure I understand, because I know we gave enough money to take care of all the past due meds. You know, we caught up on medicals last year, right? You agree with that? And then what you're telling us is between the time we set our budget and the time that we did to finish out FY22, you had $7 million more in medical costs for the rest of that year. So this is a pretty significant jump in medical treatment and the costs associated with it, just for the conclusion of 22. Is that right? Between roughly April 1 and July 1, you were up about 7 million over.
Yes.
All right. And why was that not included when you met with the Elbow and JLBC officers? Or was it? If it was, I don't remember it, but was that not included? I mean, it seemed like that would have been known in July or August.
July of last, you're talking about in July
of this year of 23 or 22, excuse me. The FY23. It seems like, if I'm understanding you correctly, you had $7 million of additional cost over what we had budgeted for.
That's right.
At the conclusion of the FY22 budget. From basically April 1, 22 to June 30, you were 7 million over in medical costs.
Yeah, but we didn't know in July. These bills keep coming in July, August, September. For the previous year, they could be February, April, any month, these bills keep coming in. We can estimate.
Yeah, why don't they get you all these bills? Why don't you make them get you the bills immediately? And that way you're able to keep up with it quickly. I mean,
well, you know, we have to go recalculate. I mean, we pay things at the Medicaid rate.
Yeah.
So it takes some time to calculate and come up with what those numbers are.
So y'all didn't know it in October, November, when we were having discussions on the DOC budget?
Yeah, I think we actually did the contract.
Yeah. What we did was, we got the consultants to come in because we're trying to stay ahead of Department of Justice. If we see we're deficient, we don't want them to find us short. And that's why we've kept pushing them back, because they see us respond really fast. So we got the consultants to come in. He cost a lot of money, but anyway, he told us what we had to have. And so therefore, then we changed the contract. That was in October. So we would be in compliance and could get these people hired and on board, so that as they keep coming back, then we've changed it. We've made it better. We fixed it. We complied with what they wanted, and the consultants, they respected. And so knew we had the right consultants doing our evaluation. So that's why it happened like it did. It just.
But just so I understand, you roughly, if I'm calculating this right, about 16 million of it's for the new medical treatment system that you got, Vital Core, whoever you use, and you got about 16 million additional costs because you want to comply with DOJ, correct? And then the other 7 million plus is going to be related to those costs that I'm just curious about why we seem like that would have been known a lot earlier. And it seems like it's an awfully high number. Now, I know you can't control it. I know it's a moving target on medical costs, but it seems like that's an awfully high number for that short of a period of time between roughly what you projected when we met back in late March and setting up the budget and the end of June to have those kind of costs and to especially not even to know them, I guess, when we're back in October or November. It kind of caught me when I saw the letter the other day. It kind of caught me by surprise. I was really taken aback at that number.
And the whole idea, Mr. Chairman, with contracting with this company to handle this off-site medical care is so that we can get a little bit better grasp on these numbers that can fluctuate $3 or $4 or $5 million based on the sickness of an inmate or how many that go out. So I believe that the system we have in place will control the fluctuation and we don't have to worry about those.
Will it shorten the time period that by having this company and doing this, will it shorten the time period by which we have these late bills that come in and suddenly we got a bunch of money? We worked hard to try to catch up on past due, and we did catch up on several years past due, which I'm glad and I'm sure you're glad about, but I don't want to be dealing, and the chairman over here, as he deals with this committee, doesn't want to be dealing with these continual, here's $7 million we got on a deficit request.
That's right. I believe that the system we have in place will, and I hate to say alleviate it because we have some maximums built into that, but I believe that this will get that under control and we shouldn't have to deal with this issue moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I concur. We spent a lot of money, taxpayer money, trying to get DOC in compliance and all that. And so when these things come up, that's why Chairman Hobson's making those questions. So I concur with him. Senator Tate, on this issue, you have a question?
Well, I do have a question. I don't know if it'd be specific to that issue.
On this medical care, that's what we're on right now.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay,
I'll wait.
we'll come to the other stuff. Okay, so moving beyond that, or if you want I interrupted you, but we needed to get to that. So turn it back over to you for your presentation.
Okay.
You were talking about your deficit request with private prisons.
Sure. So then we go into the private prison program and the regional facilities. As I stated in the letter, this is basically a direct result of, we renegotiated a new contract with the private prison program in East Mississippi. It was substantially more. I negotiated with them for 3.5 months. We settled on a number which they were getting 37. They're up to $60 per inmate per day. That's going to drive, we had no idea that that's going to happen. These companies are getting really, really tough negotiating right now because of the inflation that's out there right now. That's just the fact of the matter. And the population is up probably, I think, since we met last time, 4,000 to 5,000 inmates, and it's just driving those numbers up.
Well, I have a question. Before I ever got here to the legislature, the decision was made to go to the private prisons. Where you sit, in what I understand was it was supposed to be at a reduced cost, better outcomes and things like that. Since I've been here, all I hear is the cost goes up with the private prisons. Okay. So I don't know what your experience was in Louisiana, but are we getting the return on our investment? And that's a broad question, but is it worth what we're paying? And now if this is what you're doing and you're having their cost, so again, we're at a deficit. And so now, because you had to do that, we're being requested another 2.8 million in deficit. So you understand my question, and can you answer that?
I do, and the inflation factor is playing a role here, and also we have to get the private prisons in compliance with DOJ, and so they try to run some positions vacant that they now have to run mandatory. That's mandatory that have to be filled. So DOJ is driving this cost, but we need to be in compliance anyway. That's what it takes. So for right now, they're kind of trying to find their way, and we're trying to find ours. And the way the DOJ sees us moving is holding them back to the point that they're not coming in chasing us. Actually, they're giving us a chance, I think, to fix it and get it right. And that's what I came here to do, and Kerry did, and Jay Mallett was to fix it. And so we're getting that chance to do it, and there see we are with these contracts. So that's just how it is with the privates. They trying to be in compliance as well. And we do not have Wilkerson in compliance. Their contract is not due at this time. And so one solution was, and I'm getting way outside in the weeds here, but one solution to please DOJ was to go ahead and do a contract with Wilkerson effective July, and then change theirs because they're out of compliance with their staffing as well, but not do it at this point because their contract's not ready to be negotiated. But we will have to raise the staffing level at Wilkerson as well, as we are doing our own. And this whole deal is to keep them from coming in and doing what they did in Alabama. So we just staying ahead of them. And that's why the privates is where it is. And that's why they wanted the $60. And we still think we can handle that, and it's good, and we'll keep going with them. And they're doing a good job as far as doing the prison work. They're good enough. We think we're a little better, but anyway, we're supposed to think that. And so it's working, so just what it is.
Okay. And back to my original question, or one of the questions I had was, in your increase, it's 45.1 million in contractual services is the difference. What makes up that 45 million in contractuals? I assume some of that is the medical that we've been talking about.
So the contractual is going to be your medical and your private prisons.
Okay.
I think if I remember correctly, we're adding staff. We added staffing requirements at East Mississippi on the contract we just needed. We need to add staffing requirements, additional staffing requirements at Wilkinson to come in compliance. So that's going to be what that number is.
Okay. Senator Tate, questions?
Yes, sir. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for being here today. Had just a couple of questions here. It's been relayed to me, and this may not be true, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that in prisoner intake, that we're paying state employees to handle the service of who we've got and where they need to go, but then that we're also contracting with a private business. I believe it's Vital Care, Vital Core. Y'all familiar with what I'm talking about? Yes. Is that happening? Are we paying 2 times for the same service, and is that needed, or y'all just comment about that?
No, what we ran into a problem because when the population was what it was when COVID started, it dipped down low by a couple of thousand. It's back now to where it was when COVID started 2 years ago. So it just swooped down and came up. When it came up, then we had this big influx from the counties coming in, and our staff, quite frankly, just wasn't up to it, or didn't do it, or couldn't do it, or wouldn't do it. And so we just decided we don't have time to wait on you. We can speed this up and do it. And that's what we did. So we repositioned them as case managers in other positions. So they're utilized. We didn't lay anybody off. And we just changed the way it came in, the intake, so we could speed up. We had to speed up. The counties were going crazy trying to get people in. We had to have more beds. So we couldn't get it done with the staff we had. We knew we could privatize and do it. I knew the person we put there, and I knew they had done it before and could do it, and they did.
So is Vital Core so does that mean that Vital Core is taking on the intake process?
They do, but they play a role in that because at intake, there's medical. And so what we wanted to do is we weren't doing medical exams per se on mental health. And when they come in, we are now, so that we can divert those who need mental health over to mental health, so we don't have them in the prison not getting the treatment they need. So they also do the evaluations on health, and they do the TB shots, they do all this stuff. So intake is partially medical. So that fit the mold, we thought, to do it. And so we did catch up, and we did get the job done, and now there's no delay in intake.
But fair enough, but that's not how it was being done before, meaning the medical was not done at intake. Am I correct?
May not just have been done, but it should have been.
Okay.
And that's again, the other thing that DOJ looked at, and we did have some consultants come and look at intake. And I knew myself that it was too slow and it wasn't fast enough, and they were hanging out in quick bed too long, and we needed that bed space, need to move them on out. So it speed the whole process up. It was too slow. And our people were in a rut, and they just weren't, they were just slow walking us.
So where were those people? So if Vital Core is taking over that, where are the people that you've retained or kept on, where were they?
Well, we were short case managers and short other people, so we've moved them into those kind of positions. So it worked out well that they didn't lose their job, that we just reprogrammed them the job that they didn't have to do quite so fast.
Senator Tate, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. All right. I'm going to jump around here, and this is question. The private prisons that we have, you know, we set out a contract, I believe, that says, hey, you're going to hold X amount of prisoners. If that's the case, do we feel assured that that those prisons are holding that many people, or do we know if that's a rolling number, if it's off by a lot? And my point just being that if we're going to hold them, if we're going to say, hey, we're going to do a contract for X amount of prisoners, I just want to make sure that we are getting, you know, that many prisoners there and they're not, you know, elsewhere. Do y'all feel good that what was agreed to has been happening?
We do feel real well at it. We do keep them full. We do know what their capacity is. And so we stay in right at capacity with them, as we are the regionals and everywhere, because bed space is a premium right now. So we do. And then also we hold them accountable with penalties if they don't comply with their staffing levels. And so we're there watching them like a hawk. And we have a new person that's watching and managing and monitoring all our two private prisons. So it's working well. We are.
And I may have some more later, but right now, and it may be over. I've heard a bunch of different numbers, but I've received from the chairman that there's a $23 million above request. Is there any way that we can get a breakdown of exactly where each of these dollars will go? Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're just talking about the medical part of it? Because the deficit request for medical is 23.8 million.
I thought it was different. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I've got a breakdown of everything short, why it's short.
Okay. Any other questions?
Let me, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One or two others, gentlemen. One is, as it relates to your prison count. I mean, I'm understanding there's a difficulty in getting prisoners out of some local facilities because maybe there's a backlog. How do we stand overall as far as your capability to handle and get prisoners out of the local jails and get them to your facilities?
Right. We respond. We had a problem with women. That's why we corrected it with Delta. That problem's been solved. So now we have adequate space for them and what we anticipate to be in the near future. And the whole thing is, we looking with all the reentry programs are pretty much in place. And so we have identified all the inmates, and I'm getting to the point of cutting recidivism, which is going to give us a bit. We've identified every inmate we have that's 1 year short, women and men. And so we'll start with the women. There's 37 women at Delta that do not have a GED. They're in class right now. That 37 women are going to have a chance to have a GED before they get out this year. Also, then they'll be in skilled and trade to try to prepare them for a job. And Bradley Lum, and that working really well, how we put those together and mesh with the old MPIC. And so he's working with the skilled and trade. We did the same thing for the men. Back to the women, though, there's about 182 at 720 where we just moved them that do not have GEDs. So let's focus on basic education. Every one of them getting out should have a GED. And so therefore, then they're more employable. And also then teaching skills and trades. So Delta is going to be a gold mine for skills and trades for the women. And so we'll have all the skills there. We're working as we talk. We've just moved the welding trailer from SMCI to Delta so we can start training them with welding and so forth. We finished the class at SMCI. So the skills and trades programs are in place. there's almost 900 positions at Parchment that will have people 1 year short learning skills and trades. Focusing on them, and other folks can take soft skills that aren't that ready to be released. So then we should cut the recidivism rate by doing this. That's going to help us with bed space, and we hope to make the curve and not run out of beds and not have to have other construction or what have you. So we're trying to dodge the bullet by doing a good job with these short-term people. That's how we're moving to make the turn and curve. And we have adequate funds for the skills and trade because MPIC, or we call it MDOC Works, got a $400,000 grant and got a $4 million grant, I believe. And so they're able then to put 600,000 into skills and trade and build these schools and so forth at no taxpayer cost. So we're really moving our department in the right way, and that's pushing the Justice Department back because they're going to find that they have no reason. And so this Friday coming, we're going to have a video coming from Jay-Z, and so that lawsuit's about over with, Amos and the Jay-Z thing, and they're going to do a documentary. We're letting them go into Parchment because it's all been rebuilt. It looks good, and they can do their deal, and that's part of the settlement to get them out. So we're making a lot of progress with this department, getting it where it needs to be, and it'll stabilize out, I think, financially and so forth.
Well, two-part question, really. One is how many beds do we have available, or how short are we? And then the second part is, you talked about rounding the curve. How close are we to rounding the curve where that's never going to be an issue, that if we have locals that are trying to get people out of their local jails to you that need to go to the state penitentiary or state custody, how quickly can we get them there?
Yeah, we're at 19,174 today with 21,000 beds, but that 21,000 is not absolutely accurate because there's going to be some beds there we can't use. So we're running about 600 beds that we have that we can move to, and so that's our cushion right now. And when I think in the county we're sitting at about 1,500. So there were 2,200. I'm pulling that number out of the air.
And the curve, rounding the curve, hopefully within the next year or 6 months to a year, is that?
I think so. We think we're good to go for another year with what we have, and we'll be able to manage it.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, we got 15 minutes or 14 minutes. And so the committee members, we have they're not on the committee, but subcommittee, but our chairman and vice chairman of corrections are here. So we're a little short on time, but I want to turn it over to them for a question or two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is in regards again to the deficit request that you all are requesting from us. And I'm still not clear on how or why the explanation is as to that we are paying two individuals to do the same job. We talk about our intake process, and I know there's probably some other instances of the same thing occurring throughout, but the same people that we had used before, now we're saying that they're not qualified to do the job. Therefore, we'll find another job for them to do that we don't know that they're qualified to do as well, but we're going to pay this other company, Vidacore, this other money to do it. So to me, that's not a help to the state to where we can find people that we say that can't do a job or put them somewhere else, and they still can't do a job, and we asking for taxpayers to spend other money. So I don't understand how we can come to that conclusion or how we can ask for monies, but we have people that's not doing the job that they was assigned to do.
Well, that's what we have to decide, is whether we're going to honor that deficit request. So if you can, yeah, go ahead.
I can answer that question, but you're going to put me in the weeds again because I can't delay the intake. Okay, they've got to come. The counties have got to be able to put people in jail for public safety. So I have to process them and get them in. So obviously with COVID over, we had a wave of people coming in. So the staff that we had, just to put it bluntly, they just weren't going to do it. They just would not move fast enough to get them in. And I tried to get them to work overtime, and they didn't want to work overtime. So therefore, if they didn't want to work overtime and be paid to do it, our object, we had shortages and we had vacancies. was to move these folks in vacancies that weren't so urgent and put some folks in there that took off and went to work and got them in. Because, so that's what we did. So we didn't have any choice to wait. We were kind of in a bind. It's kind of ultimatum to us, and we don't do ultimatums well. We just moved on and got somebody that would and did it and fixed it.
Okay, well, I know we have time throughout the session to address some of these other things, and I'm not gonna hold y'all up, but thank you for that. And I'm on. Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me an opportunity to ask that question.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a hearing this afternoon with Judge B and Corrections. If I run out of time, I'll ask questions there. So some of mine are very specific. We were under contract at Meridian at East, and they're supposed to be ACA certified. Why do they have to hire more guards under the new contract? They were already under a contract to be ACA certified.
They were ACA certified, but they weren't in compliance with what the Justice Department expected us to have. So they come in and saying the prison's unconstitutional because you don't have adequate staff. So our option was to hire staff, to hire someone to go and redo the staffing analysis for all our prisons, which we did.
I'm going to interrupt you just a second. I'm sorry. I've read the contract. They were already under contract to have the requisite number of guards to be ACA certified. So you're telling me ACA certified is not good enough for the DOJ?
I'm saying that there's two different deals. That ACA and what they required, one thing, Department of Justice is the other. And so they have to get the people there, and they didn't have them there. We were charging them the penalty. And so they've got to pay more, get more, have more people. They just didn't have enough. So a lot of places are ACA certified, but still would be out of compliance with justice, because that's a whole different deal.
But we hired them under contract to meet those staffing, and they failed. You said we've charged them a penalty. How much penalty have we charged them?
How much total penalty have we charged them over what period of time?
Well, I mean, it's concerning to me that if we're under contract with a company, we don't have private prisons in Mississippi, although everybody says that. They're all Mississippi prisons. These are private operated.
That's right.
Under contract.
That's right.
We were under contract with a company. We were paying them $38.72 a day. This ask for this committee is $60 a day, which is in excess of the $59 a day peer number that we supposedly have to be 90% of. That's why I'm saying I may have a lot of questions, but the first one is, how in the world can we enter into a contract for $60 a day when we don't have authority to do that because we have a 10% less than the peer number rule?
Right. So the model that Peer does is based on a model that was set at the Marshall County facility, right? So it's a different inmate and requires different staffing numbers. So the short answer to your question is that it's a different model.
Okay, so we're now going to have close custody people at Meridian?
Yes, we're gonna have close custody people at Meridian. We're gonna have mental patients. We already have those at Meridian, which require a different staffing number and a different staffing per inmate that it does at the Marshall County facility that has all medium custody inmates.
Okay, the request also appears to ask for an increase for regionals up to about $34.10. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we're housing 3,400 or so people, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 in our regionals.
Well, about 4,000.
4,000. And we are housing on average about 900 people in our county jails.
Yes.
And we're paying them how much a day?
I think it's $20 a day.
Okay, so DeSoto County today, would it surprise you that they have 100 state inmates in DeSoto County and we're paying them $20 a day?
Would it surprise me? No.
And we don't have any idea what custody level they are.
That's right.
So we're going to pay $60 a day to a company but we're gonna pay $20 a day. And I would say to the appropriations chair, I've dropped a bill the last 2 years and I'll drop one this year to increase that rate. We need to get them out of the county jails because we don't even know what custody level they are. But I am greatly concerned with the increase. I'm also greatly concerned with the contracts, and I'll ask this. Who reviews contracts that we enter into as a Department of Corrections?
Who reviews them?
Yes, sir.
Well, I do, my staff does, our legal staff does.
Anybody from the AG's office or anybody outside of DOC?
No.
And are you
Well,
saying,
the DFA, of course, they get the contracts over there.
are we currently under contract with Vital Core?
Yes,
Is it under emergency provisions?
yes,
And did I understand you say there's gonna be an RFP for a long-term contract?
that's right.
And how many contracts are we in with Vital Core right now?
3, it's one master contract, but we've added some things to it. We've added the off-site medical care, and we've also added the intake stuff to their master contract.
Are we going to put a guarantee in the contract for them for the number of prisoners across the system?
Yes,
And what is that number gonna be?
whatever the population is.
But the population is up to 19,000 from 16,000 in 12 months. How are we gonna pick a number? Because if we pick a high number and parole starts happening again, will we not be paying for ghost inmates?
Well, we pay per inmate per day with those things up to a certain level, and I think if it goes above that, then it adjusts up, of course, because they have to add staff to it to meet the number. If it goes down, yeah, of course, we'll probably have to have some minimum number, or you just won't get these companies to participate. But that's why we've got an expert that does these things, that knows how to do these things, that's working on our RFP for us right now. He's a he was the Alabama, an attorney in Alabama, went through all that with him, so that'll be part of that solicitation.
Do we still have a inmate guarantee on the Meridian facility, the East facility?
We do a 90-day agreement. We do have a minimum guarantee, yes.
What is that minimum?
1,350.
That's what's been in the contract for years, correct?
That's right.
You've asked for an appropriation based on 1,300.
Right. We just signed this contract Friday, I think, Thursday or Friday of last week. Yeah. And it's a 90-day contract. It's 90 days
But we're still at 1,350 guarantee.
for 90 days. That's right.
I'm just saying the appropriation only asked for 1,300.
That's right. Yeah, this was part of the negotiation that was done after that. And it, like I said, we just signed the contract and they held hard to that. It's 90 days. We'll try to negotiate that over the next 90 days and bring it back down. We'll see what happens.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we got 5 minutes to spare. You got one quick question.
From what I understand, the counties, when they hold state inmates, the county has to front the medical bills. And at least in one county, it's been reported to me that there's about a 2-year backlog on paying that. Is that true? And what do we need to do to try to close that gap? That may not be true, but that's what was indicated to me.
Yeah, I can't imagine unless there was some kind of, I don't know about it, unless there's some kind of dispute over
I'll
a
get
fee or
someone
something.
that's there with it to get up with you about that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We'll be glad to take care of it.
Okay, and look, I'll talk to the chairman if need be. I'm willing to schedule another subcommittee hearing, and I would think that MDOC would be here because I think these are good discussions that we've got to get at to get this going. So thank y'all very much. Senate goes in at 10, meeting adjourned. Appreciate it.